Welcome to today's Explainer, where we are unpacking a story with absolutely cinematic stakes. We're tracking the life of a legendary host and warrior whose incredible journey literally bridges the sun-scorched deserts of 7th century Medina all the way to the vibrant modern streets of Istanbul. It's a sweeping, epic saga of devotion, of war, and an astonishing legacy that just completely transcends centuries. Just listen to the sheer gravity of those final words. We are talking about an 80-year-old warrior dying of illness during an intense siege in the year 669 CE. And he isn't asking for a safe ride home, right? No, he's demanding to be buried at the very edge of enemy lines, right up against the formidable walls of Constantinople. It's this dramatic, mind-blowing climax to a life defined by unyielding dedication. But to really understand this extraordinary death, we kind of have to understand his life. So what does this all actually mean? How on earth does a humble guy from the Arabian Peninsula end up becoming a foundational pillar for the mighty Ottoman Empire? An empire, by the way, that wouldn't even exist until centuries after he died. To figure out his legendary end, we have to travel back in time to the very beginning. Okay, let's dive into this. All right, the year is 622 CE. Prophet Muhammad has just completed the Hijrah, that momentous emigration from Mecca to the city of Yathrib, which is soon going to be known as Medina. And as he enters the city, the atmosphere is just electric. There's this intense excitement and, honestly, a fierce, loving competition among the city's chieftains. I mean, every single one of them is lining the streets, pleading with the Prophet to stay at their home, offering him the most lavish reception you could possibly imagine. But to avoid playing favorites in a city that was already deeply divided by tribal loyalties, the Prophet makes a brilliant decision. He lets his camel, Qaswa, make the choice for him, declaring she is under the command of God. You can imagine the crowd watching in total suspense as Qaswa wanders through the dirt streets until she finally halts and kneels. And she stops directly at an open space next to the two-story house of a man named Khalid ibn Zayd, who history remembers best by his title, Abu Ayyub al-Ansari. Now, Abu Ayyub was absolutely thrilled. He prepped his upper floor for his esteemed guest, but the Prophet actually preferred the ground floor because he had so many visitors. Well, this created a massive dilemma for Abu Ayyub and his wife, and it perfectly illustrates their profound respect. They were absolutely terrified of walking directly above the Prophet, fearing they might somehow interrupt divine revelation. They would literally hug the edges of the walls to move around upstairs. They even tracked where the Prophet's fingers touched his meals and ate from those exact spots, and completely dropped garlic and onions from their diets the second they learned he disliked them. Now here's where it gets incredibly personal. One freezing cold night, disaster strikes on the upper floor. A clay water jar shatters, spilling precious water everywhere. Abu Ayyub and his wife completely panic. Terrified that the water is going to seep through the floorboards and drip onto the Prophet sleeping below, they frantically grab the absolute only item they have to absorb the water, their single velvet quilt. They spent that entire freezing night shivering in the dark, happily sacrificing their only source of warmth just to protect their guest. So, the very next morning, an exhausted but totally resolute Abu Ayyub goes down to the Prophet and begs him, "I do not like to be above you." Recognizing their genuine distress, the Prophet agrees to swap floors. You can just imagine the relief. The Prophet ended up staying under Abu Ayyub's devoted care for 7 whole months until his own permanent home and the famous Prophet's Mosque were finally finished right next door. But hey, Abu Ayyub wasn't just a gracious host. The man was a dynamic leader. His devotion to his faith definitely wasn't confined to his living room. As the Islamic community expanded, his responsibilities skyrocketed. He would eventually become a deeply dedicated statesman, even serving as the governor of Medina during the caliphate of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And if we trace his timeline, it reveals a relentless warrior. Abu Ayyub fought in almost every single major early Islamic battle, from Badr to Uhud, the Battle of the Trench, and all the way over to the conquest of Egypt. He literally never stopped fighting alongside the early Islamic leaders. His life was this continuous, unbroken thread of service. And that thread stretches all the way to the year 669 CE, right to the legendary walls of Constantinople. I really want you to pause and think about this for a second. What kind of sheer, unbreakable willpower is required for an 80-year-old man who is already giving his entire life in service, who has hosted a prophet, who has governed a city, to pack his bags, cross seas and continents, and join Yazid's Umayyad expedition?
He rode out as the army's standard-bearer, and it was right there, ravaged by illness, outside those impregnable Byzantine walls, that he made that fateful final request we talked about.
And this is where history gets beautifully symmetrical. Back in the 7th century, the Muslim army was ultimately repelled, but they successfully buried Abu Ayyub at the walls just like he asked. The Byzantines actually came to highly respect the site over the years, yet it wasn't until almost 8 centuries later, during the 1453 Ottoman conquest by Sultan Mehmed II, that Abu Ayyub's legacy was completely resurrected. As the legend goes, right in the middle of the 1453 siege, Sultan Mehmed II's spiritual advisor, Akshemseddin, miraculously locates the lost grave. The story says he fell asleep, woke up, and just pointed to a specific spot. They dig down 3 yards, and bam, they uncover a square stone of vert antique with Kufic letters that reads, "This is the tomb of Abu Ayyub." This amazing discovery sent a massive surge of morale straight through the Ottoman troops, propelling them to finally conquer the city. Recognizing the profound spiritual weight of having this Sahabi, this close companion of the Prophet, buried at their brand new capital, Sultan Mehmed II went all out. He ordered a massive religious complex, a collier, to be built over the tomb between 1458 and 1459. This wasn't just a grave anymore, you guys. It became the thriving core of an entire district in Istanbul, complete with a madrasa, a bustling public soup kitchen, and a bathhouse, all radiating out from the grand tomb of Abu Ayyub, or as he's known in Turkish, Ayyub Sultan. The structure standing there today is an absolute architectural marvel, and it has incredible resilience. It was actually largely destroyed by a massive earthquake back in 1766, but Sultan Selim III stepped in and completely rebuilt it by the year 1800. If you go visit today, you'll see this stunning fusion of Baroque elegance and classical Ottoman design. It's crowned by this majestic 17.5-meter central dome, and it's adorned inside and out with breathtaking 16th century Islamic tiles. It is a masterpiece, totally fitting for a hero. But here's the real kicker. Abu Ayyub wasn't just a spiritual icon for the Ottomans. He was deeply political. This site became so revered that it hosted a ceremony equivalent to an imperial coronation. Starting with Bayezid II, brand new Ottoman sultans would travel to the Ayyub Sultan tomb to be girded with the sword of Osman, the founder of the dynasty. By physically linking the start of their rule to the exact companion who hosted the prophet, the sultans cemented their ultimate legitimacy and sanctified their entire empire. Fast forward to today, nestled right along the Golden Horn, the Ayyub Sultan Mosque is definitely not some quiet, dusty museum. It is the living, breathing, enduring spiritual heart of Istanbul. It remains one of the busiest, most intensely revered sites in the entire city. It's a vibrant center of continuous prayer, bustling charity, and deep historical connection. Millions of people walk its courtyards every year, breathing life into a legacy that started on a dusty street in Medina over 1,400 years ago. Which leaves us with this final, pretty incredible thought to reflect on as we wrap up this explainer. If a single, sincere act of hospitality, simply opening up your home or giving up a velvet blanket on a freezing night, can echo across 8 centuries, inspire the conquest of walled cities, and legitimize one of history's greatest empires, what legacy are we building today? Abu Ayyub al-Ansari lived his life in relentless, passionate devotion, from his own doorstep all the way to the battlefield, leaving a mark that time literally cannot erase. Thank you so much for learning with me today, and keep exploring.